Everybody, and welcome to our electronic, I'm getting feedback, okay, electronic committee of the whole meeting of March 8th, 2022. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Regional Council is practicing physical distancing and participating electronically. Regional Chair Redmond and myself are present in Council chambers. Today, we celebrate International Women's Day. And on behalf of Regional Council, I want to thank the many organizations across our community that work daily to improve gender equality and raise the voices of women and girls in our region. Our region has had a long history of strong female leadership in our community, organizations, education, business, and elected offices. This trend continues throughout the pandemic across our healthcare system, the media, in advocacy, and public health. We know better decisions are made when women and girls have a seat at the table. I look to my colleagues, to regional staff, local businesses, and to all Waterloo Region residents to continue the work in 2022 to break the bias and address gender inequality in our community. Thank you. I will now give the floor to Chair Redmond.
Thank you, Chair Jowett. Today is the first time that our council has met since the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Waterloo Region is well known for its vibrant multiculturalism, including significant Ukrainian community. To our neighbors with Ukrainian heritage, ancestry, and family, we stand with you in solidarity. You, your families, and friends are in our thoughts and prayers. I want to thank the various individuals and organizations across our region who have selflessly given their time and resources to supporting the Ukrainian community, both here and in Ukraine. I think first of the non-governmental organizations and faith institutions who have marshaled support and resources. I think as well of the local businesses who have supported their Ukrainian colleagues or adjusted their foreign operations in response to the war. I also want to commend our colleague, Councillor Jaworski, for his humanity and thoughtfulness on what I know is a deeply personal issue for him, as it is for many of our staff and many residents. The region of Waterloo stands with you. We all pray for a swift and peaceful resolution.
Thank you, Chair Redmond. I will now ask Caitlin to conduct the roll call.
Thank you, Chair Jowett. Regional Chair Redmond.
Present.
Councillor Vervanovic. Councillor Jaworski.
Here.
Councillor Clark. Councillor Jowett.
Here.
Councillor Erb.
Here.
Councillor Nowak.
Present.
Councillor Kiefer.
Here.
Councillor McGarry. Councillor Armstrong.
Present.
Councillor Harris.
I'm here.
Councillor Shantz. Councillor Strickland.
Here.
Councillor Foxton.
Present.
And Councillor Galloway.
Here. And I'm here now too.
Thank you and welcome. Okay, and so I would like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather virtually today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and the neutral people. We acknowledge the enduring presence of Indigenous people with whom we share the land today, their achievements, and their contributions to our community. I will now seek for any delegations of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. And seeing none, we have a presentation. It is the COVID-19 update by Dr. Rabia Bana and David Aoki. Are you there?
Yes, good morning. It's Dr. Bana here.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair, and good morning, councillors. I'll start off by presenting a short update on the COVID-19 situation, followed by David Aoki, who will present a vaccine update. So I'll start off with some key highlights over the past several weeks. Vaccination and public health measures have been extremely effective at reducing the impact of the pandemic, including during the recent Omicron wave. And it's because of these sacrifices that residents have made throughout the pandemic that we've been able to gradually lift restrictions. Although we are trending in the right direction, we still need to be cautious. COVID-19 continues to circulate at relatively high levels, and we won't know the impact of the March 1st changes to public health measures until about mid-March. Next slide, please. In terms of our indicators, we are seeing slow declines or plateauing in our overall trends. The wastewater data, which is shown here up to February 26th, indicates that the decline in the COVID-19 virus signal has slowed or plateaued at all our sites. The 7-day moving average of percent positivity also continues to slowly decrease and is now at 8.3%. The number of outbreaks in high-risk settings also continues to decline. There were 7 outbreaks as of yesterday, including 3 in congregate settings and 4 hospital outbreaks. Hospitalizations remain stable. As of our latest update yesterday, there were 22 total hospitalizations and 12 in the ICU. Next slide, please. We still need to be cautious while COVID-19 continues to circulate at relatively high levels. Vaccination, including a booster dose, is our best defense against the virus and its variants. Masking indoors will continue to provide an added layer of protection in the coming weeks. We are in a stronger position today than we were 2 years ago due to the ongoing efforts of our community, especially with respect to vaccination. Currently, we have 85% of the eligible population 5 years and older who have received 2 doses of the vaccine, and 54% of the eligible population 12 years and older who have received 3 doses. I'll now pass it on to David Aoki for a vaccine update. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bana. Thank you, Madam Chair. As of this morning, the regional dashboard is showing 88.6% of all those 5 years of age and older in the region have at least 1 dose of vaccine. And as Dr. Bana said, 85% of those are fully vaccinated. Of those 12 years of age and older eligible for a 3rd dose, 54% have been boosted. Of note, we have now surpassed 80% of all Waterloo residents being fully vaccinated, and 90% of those 18 years of age and older are fully vaccinated. Last week, we celebrated 2 milestones. The Wellesley Clinic had its last days of operation on Saturday, March 5th, and on Friday, March 1st, the Boardwalk Mass Immunization Clinic marked 1 year since its opening. The Wellesley Clinic has provided over 34,000 doses to residents and has greatly increased our rural community access to COVID-19 vaccine. The Boardwalk has administered almost 235,000 doses and continues operations to help provide 1st, 2nd, and 3rd doses. We would like to continue to promote that our clinics are open and available for walk-ins for anyone wishing to get any of their 1st, 2nd, or 3rd doses. Also, for anyone 12 years of age and older, a 3rd dose is still recommended to continue to prevent the spread of COVID. Our clinics, pharmacies, and primary care continue to be ready to provide vaccine to anyone who is eligible. The Cambridge Pine Bush Clinic remains open on Wednesdays and Saturdays and has mobile teams running throughout the week. They have also begun to restart the planning for the regional vaccine buses for those who cannot access our fixed sites. We continue to provide numerous opportunities to clients through mobile and school clinics. Our after-school immunization clinics have been successful in providing over 1,100 doses to students and their families since the start of December. We continue to partner with new and existing organizations to expand our clinics into more neighborhoods and to ensure that we offer vaccine where people live, work, and play in the region. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you to you both. I'm just going to sort of scan the Zoom here to see if there are any comments, questions. That shows us it was a fulsome report. So thank you both for your work and certainly your presentation here today. Okay, so I'm going to move to the delegations, and we'll now proceed with delegations as listed on our agenda. I'd like to remind all delegations of some guidelines for participation. Please leave your video camera turned off and your microphone audio muted until you are called upon to speak. Today's delegations will be allotted 5 minutes to speak. Groups of 2 or more will be allotted 10 minutes. We also ask that you leave the meeting once your issue has been addressed. You are more than welcome to join and watch the remainder of the meeting being webcast live via our YouTube channel. And if you conduct yourself in any of the following manners, it will result in an immediate removal from the meeting: interrupting councillor, staff, or other delegations, derogatory statements about councillor, staff, and others, turning your camera on at inappropriate times, and hate speech or defamatory comments. I'd also like to note at this time, if you don't see any response to your delegation, please don't take offense to that, as it is our opportunity to listen today to our delegation. So thank you for that. We'll move to the first delegation. Warren Schnurr, Chair of Union in Politics Committee, Unifor 4304, Lincoln Watershed Initiative, Kitchener. Are you there?
I am, thank you.
Welcome, Warren.
So good morning, Madam Chair and members of Regional Council. My name is Warren Schnurr. I am the Chair of the Union and Politics Committee of Unifor Local 4304. And I'm here today as a representative of the Link to Watershed Transit Initiative Working Group, of which our union is a member. Our working group currently includes both Unifor and ATO union locals, the Transit Action Alliance of Guelph, as well as representatives of post-secondary student unions and faculty associations. To date, we have also received support for establishing the transit connections proposed in the Link to Watershed Transit Initiative from the Guelph Chamber of Commerce, the Brantford Brant Chamber of Commerce, and the Greater KW Chamber of Commerce. The Link to Watershed proposal is briefly summarized in Report TES TRS 2202, along with estimated costs to implement 4 proposed transit routes between Waterloo Region, Guelph, and Brantford. More information about the initiative is available at linkthewatershed.ca. I would like to make a couple of points of clarity regarding the reported estimated operating costs. First, the $7.5 million estimated annual cost is the cost proposed to be shared amongst the 3 area urban transit services, with approximately $4 million annually being the portion for operating 2 proposed GRT routes. Second, the estimated operating cost assumes a service frequency of 30 minutes would be provided all day, every day. When our union met with GRT planning staff in the fall, it was suggested that providing 30-minute service at all times may actually be too robust to start with, and that operating costs could be reduced if 30-minute service is not required during certain time periods. It may also be possible that capital costs for the purchase of buses to operate the proposed routes could be reduced by retaining some buses that are due for replacement, but that may still have some service life left in them. The region joining the provincial Greater Golden Horseshoe West cross-boundary study is definitely a step in the right direction, and I would like to thank staff for pursuing that avenue as it engages neighboring transit services and upper-level government partners. But we would also like to stress the urgent need to establish a robust interconnected transit network between our communities, like we have proposed, as soon as possible, including the participation of neighboring transit services that may not currently be in the study area. This urgency needs to be communicated to all study partners. During our working group discussions, it has been made clear that the existing transit services between our communities are inadequate and have been so even prior to the withdrawal of Greyhound. Transit users currently experience travel times between our communities measured in hours, when traveling by car can be completed in 20 to 30 minutes. Employers contract shuttle bus services to transport employees between communities because public transit is not available, despite the fact their property taxes already help fund local services. Residents have turned down employment opportunities in neighboring communities since public transit is not an option, and seniors and people with disabilities are incurring double-digit cab fares to access specialized medical services in neighboring communities. We tend to agree with staff that funding for these new transit services should be coming from the provincial and federal governments if at all possible, especially given the budget challenges due to the pandemic. However, if for some reason funding is not forthcoming, we believe our municipal governments should be willing to explore these services themselves. The region has continually shown itself to be proactive when it comes to public transit investment. The creation of Grand River Transit, annual investments in transit service, as well as implementation of ION have proven that providing high-quality public transit is an important goal of the region, which is commendable. These missing transit links, despite crossing municipal boundaries, are local in nature to the people who need to travel between our communities, and we believe our local transit providers should be operating these connections to best serve transit users. It simply does not make sense that a transit rider can travel the distance from Cambridge to Elmira using one local transit system for $3.25, but cannot travel the shorter distances between Cambridge and Guelph or Cambridge and Brantford while spending much more in fare and hours of travel time. This lack of transit connectivity needs to be rectified as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Warren. Perfectly timed. I see no hands, so I'll continue on. Our next delegation is Justin McLaughlin, Senior Manager, Advocacy, Conestoga College Students, Inc. Justin, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Welcome. Please proceed.
Thank you very much, Chair. And through the Chair, hello, members of Regional Council. My name is Justin McLaughlin, and I'm the Senior Manager of Advocacy for Conestoga Students, Inc., also known as CSI. We are the official student association of Conestoga College and represent over 23,000 students. Our advocacy efforts are guided by pillars of accountability, affordability, equity, and sustainability, which has brought me here today as a representative of the students of Conestoga to voice both praise and concern from the Guelph Cross-Boundary Transit Study. This study is an essential step forward in the effort of improving interregional public transportation. As an organization who operates in the Waterloo region and cities of Guelph and Brantford, we are pleased to see the identification of the importance and demand for improving interregional transit between the region of Waterloo and Guelph, but we're disappointed to see Brantford and surrounding rural areas excluded as an area of current consideration for improving interregional transit. We acknowledge that there is mention within the staff report of potential future consideration for these areas, but there has been a lack of interconnectivity for decades, and the report offers no timelines for when expansion outside of the two-way all-day-go railway corridor should be expected. The report states the focus of the study will initially be the connections between Guelph and the region of Waterloo, with the reasoning for this decision focused around the goal of improving potential ridership for two-way all-day-go and to serve existing demand for needs such as linking these communities for employment opportunities and providing transportation for post-secondary students living or studying in these communities. While we wholly agree that the demand for interregional connectivity between the region of Waterloo and Guelph exists, it also exists between the region of Waterloo and Brantford for the same reasons. Staff have stated they believe much of the responsibility for community travel falls with Metrolinx. This may be the case for the GTHA, where Metrolinx is most focused, but their network is heavily focused on a hub and spoke model of transporting people from the outer ring, which includes Brantford, into the GTH core areas to a hub, to follow a spoke back out into the outer ring communities of the GTHA. This is evident in Metrolinx's 2041 Regional Transportation Plan and is currently the practice used today, which means those trying to go from the region of Waterloo to Brantford or vice versa are forced to take GO to Hamilton and Mississauga for transfers to complete a 4-hour one-way trip. If we wait for Metrolinx and the MTO to take action, we will never have intercommunity travel by public transportation between Brantford and the region of Waterloo. Exploring and implementing interregional connectivity between the region of Waterloo and Brantford would be invaluable for post-secondary students and staff of both Conestoga College and Laurier who have campuses in Brantford and the region of Waterloo. Not only would it be valuable for our post-secondary communities, but also for the broader communities. Stats Canada's Journey to Work information derived from the 2016 census highlights that 2,125 Brantford residents commute to the region of Waterloo for work, while 2,140 region of Waterloo residents commute to Brantford for work. The lack of north-south interregional connectivity has persisted for far too long and has been exacerbated by the demise of Greyhound. Currently, there are no plans in development with concrete timelines by any level of government to address the lack of connectivity. Although there are no government plans, staff's report highlights the Link the Watershed initiative. The Link the Watershed initiative was developed by local transit unions and is supported more broadly by various community stakeholders who see the economic, sustainability, and equity benefits of linking communities within the Grand River watershed, including the rural communities surrounding. The staff's report highlights the linking the communities of Brantford, Guelph, and the region of Waterloo as a desirable goal, but also identifies some issues with the initiative focused on financial barriers. Staff state the initiative will cost a total of $7.5 million annually to operate it, as stated by Warren in his previous delegation, but it fails to highlight that this cost is shared amongst the 3 different municipal transit companies. Staff also highlight that COVID-19 has created financial challenges for public transit, which would make the initiative difficult to commit to, but there are various other sources of government funding to assist, including the Canada Community Building Fund, Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, and Rural Transit Solutions Fund, just to name a few. Therefore, we agree that it makes sense to work collaboratively, but instead of working collaboratively only with the province, why not work collaboratively with communities and the provincial and federal governments to bring interregional transit to our communities now? Metrolinx's transportation plan demonstrates that connecting communities to each other outside of the GTHA is not their priority, and to rely on them for this regional connectivity is detrimental to the socioeconomic well-being of our communities. While staff continue to participate in the Guelph cross-boundary transit study, they should also form an interregional transit working group with our neighboring communities to create a plan working toward making public transit in the Grand River watershed more accessible, convenient, and affordable for everyone. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have, and we hope we can work together to better connect the region of Waterloo to Brantford and other rural communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Justin. And I do see that we have someone interested in making some comments or asking questions. So, Councillor Galway, you have the floor.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks, Justin, for the presentation. Justin, I'm just curious what the current status is of the college's ability to institute a universal pass for the students in terms of the challenge that the various student associations had with the provincial government, and whether or not that is something that can now proceed unabated.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Galloway, for the question. Through the chair, now that the Student Choice Initiative, which is the program you're referring to, that created the barriers before to implementing the UPass program, that has been withdrawn. It was defeated in courts. So the potential for that program to be something that is considered in the future is able to happen again. We did conduct some research over the last year amongst our students, and we have identified that it looks like something they may still be interested in within pursuing. And our executive team and Students Association's board of directors are currently considering those plans moving forward and how best to proceed.
So at this point in time, there's no definite plans for a new referendum, but it's under consideration.
It's under full consideration and will be part of our strategic planning process over the next 2 months. There was discussions about potentially over the next 2 years holding a referendum, but nothing has been solidified.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Much appreciated, Justin, for that clarity. Okay, so we'll now look to Ian Muller, President and CEO, Wilfrid Laurier University Students Union. Are you there? There you are, Ian. Please proceed. Welcome.
Thank you, and good morning, Madam Chair and members of Regional Council. So my name is Ian Muller, and I'm actually the Director of Policy Research and Advocacy with the Wilfrid Laurier University Students Union. I'm speaking today on behalf of Peggy Jamiloff, who is the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Students Union, who was unable to join us this morning. We represent over 19,000 undergraduate students at campuses in Brantford and Waterloo, and in 2024, Laurier will welcome a new campus in the city of Milton. I'm here today to add an important perspective to the Waterloo Region Guelph Cross-Boundary Transit Study Report. We appreciate the Region of Waterloo's focus on the fare and service integration provincial municipal table and participation in the Greater Golden Horseshoe West Cross-Boundary Study. When considering the next options for cross-boundary service expansion, the Students' Union asks Regional Council to strongly consider the model proposed by Link the Watershed and continue to explore strategies for funding and implementing the pilot project. We believe that showcasing an integrated network of rural and urban transit services would demonstrate the value of a permanent and more comprehensive version of this transportation plan for the long term, while providing much needed options in the short term. Linking Guelph Transit, Grand River Transit, and Brant Transit by extending selected existing routes would better integrate regional labor markets, expand the accessibility of important services for residents, address congestion on key intercity routes, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions to help meet institutional, regional, provincial, and national commitments to climate action. Further, in an era when the cost of living is outpacing wage growth and in recognition of existing inequalities along racial and socioeconomic lines within our communities, improving the reach of public transit is also a matter of social justice. As Regional Council understands well, colleges and universities drive economic development, are important research hubs, valued employers, and active community members. With post-secondary campuses present in Guelph, Waterloo, Kitchener, Cambridge, and Brantford, interregional mobility is an important factor for recruitment, retention, and community integration. A comprehensive interregional transportation system is especially critical for post-secondary students. The spring 2021 termination of Greyhound Canada's remaining bus routes further diminished a bleak interregional transportation network. Post-secondary students depend on transit not only to travel to and from their campus, but between institutions for professional and extracurricular endeavors, to attend cooperative education placements and internships, and for institutions like Laurier to take advantage of a multi-campus university system. The Laurier Students' Union is a member of the Ontario Undergraduate Student Alliance, which represents the interests of approximately 150,000 professional undergraduate, full-time and part-time university students at 8 student associations across Ontario. A 2020 Housing, Transit, and Community Development Policy paper from this representative group stresses several important concerns about the state of interregional transit for post-secondary students in Ontario. Specifically, a lack of transit routes connecting different municipalities, and the routes that do exist often lack coordination and interconnectivity. The ability to easily move between municipalities can negatively impact a student's experience while studying and or living in a municipality outside of their permanent residency. Students in municipalities with few interregional transit options lack affordable means of travel, and there are limited direct transportation options for students wishing to travel between regional or international airports and university campuses. For the Laurier community, the addition of a public transit link between our Waterloo Region campus and our Brantford campus would be a major benefit for students who seek to take advantage of specialized course offerings away from their home campus or shift between campus programs during the degree. Laurier has routinely ranked #1 in the country for student satisfaction in the Maclean's rankings of Canadian universities, and a request we often hear from students is to broaden the multi-campus scope of their extracurricular and experiential learning opportunities. In conclusion, the Link the Watershed pilot project complements the strategic imperatives of the region of Waterloo's current strategic plan. Intentional cross-boundary transit service expansion is equity-focused, works to mitigate the climate crisis, balances the needs of rural and urban communities, and explores partnerships in pursuit of a valuable interregional transportation network. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you so much for that, Ian. And I am going to look to our Commissioner Thomas Schmidt to report for information on the staff report 7.3.2. Are you there? Thomas? Neil Malcolm, perhaps? Oh, there's Thomas. There he is. Hi, Thomas.
Yes, to you, Madam Chair. We actually do not have a presentation. The report is for information only. We are, as been noted by the delegations, participating in groups to look at these options and then come back to council with a recommendation on how to move forward with this. So we're really here. If council has any questions, we're quite happy to try and respond to those.
Okay, so thank you, Thomas. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, so I do appreciate you coming in and making the commentary. Councillor Galway, did you have something you wanted to comment on here? You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, first of all, I really am glad that staff picked up on this study that was being done by Langston and NPO and got ourselves inserted into the process. Kudos to staff for doing that. This is really quite an important initiative. Now, having said that, my concern is that the study seems to be quite open-ended in terms of timing. First of all, I don't know if staff have any idea whether or not there is a time frame for this study to be concluded and for its recommendations to be published. So that's my first question. The second is my suspicion is that we're looking at multi-year here in terms of something happening prior to the pandemic, and of course we're not through the pandemic entirely for sure, and who knows what is yet to come. But we were in discussions with Guelph Transit for a service had not come to fruition. I'm wondering whether or not what the status of that is, if that is going to be resurrected, or because my concern is my concern is that if we wait for Metrolinx and the MTO, it could be quite a number of years. The need is much more prevalent than that, and whether or not we can, in the interim, kind of have a parallel process with Guelph Transit to continue to see what we can make of initiative with Guelph Transit.
Through you, Madam Chair, I just received an email actually from Blair Allen, and he indicated that the study with Metrolinx was proposed to be completed in May of this year, so actually relatively quickly.
Okay, well, that's good news.
Yeah. We have had, as noted, we have had discussions with Guelph on service. We continue with those. We haven't reached a conclusion on that. I think largely COVID has sidelined a lot of these plans that we were working on, and I think right now, we're focused on regrowing our ridership, which is still substantially down from pre-COVID levels, and that's really been the focus of staff, is working on getting back to where we were before, which I think is critical to allowing us to move forward with other expansions, both internal and external, because at the same time that we could look at increases in service to neighboring communities, there continue to be needs for improved service internally to the region as well.
So, well, it's good news, Thomas, that the MTO Metrolinx study could be over as soon as May. And I suppose we could wait to see what the recommendations are of that. But I would hope in the meantime that we can continue our discussions with Guelph Transit and, maybe have something available for council to consider for the 2023 budget. Anyways, that's my opinion. Maybe we should have a discussion on this on another occasion, but I would like to see something moving forward in regards to at least the Waterloo Region Guelph connection.
Through you, Madam Chair, we can continue that work with Guelph, and I think we should have some discussions maybe offline on how that fits within the budget process. I think it's just currently we continue to monitor our ridership. We have received funding from the province to deal with shortfalls we had, but that funding is running out. So next year's budget, we will have to look at our essentially our own resources to fund transit. So that is a consideration depending on where we are with ridership. We may have more or less options on improving service. But I think that's a discussion we can definitely have.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I'm not thinking that it's completely dedicated to Waterloo Region and Guelph. I'm thinking the airport. I'm thinking Breslau and other locations a little more comprehensively in terms of the connection between Waterloo Region and Guelph as part of a route that would service potentially the airport and some of the new residential areas in Breslau.
Yes, we are working with the airport and have had discussions with them on how best to provide service to the airport. It's a unique service for the airport because it is obviously driven to some extent by staff and others that are going there to work and come back from work, as well as providing service for air passengers. So
yeah, well, the airport's attracting a fair bit of business from Guelph and terms of passengers. So again, that's all part of this bigger picture as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Galway. Councillor Kiefer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to, it's fine that staff is looking at the expansion of transportation to other municipalities, but I do agree with Mr. Schmidt that we need to also concentrate to make sure we have our internal transportation avenues in place and working, and don't have to remind council that we need to get the LRT to Cambridge in place too. So that's all part of the transportation factor as well. But I just wanted to make sure that we don't lose that aspect. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Kiefer. All right, so seeing no other hands, I'm looking to call in our next delegation. Nina Deeb, real estate broker in Kitchener. Are you there? Nina? Can I know? Nina, are you there? Are you able to connect with us? Councillor Foxton, did you have some comments to make? Please proceed.
Just a quick one, and I think this growing of the transit's wonderful, but I think we should also have the whole region of Waterloo connected at some point in consideration of going outside the region. Because as you know, North Dumfries and both Wellesley have not got connection as well. Thank you.
Much appreciated, Councillor Foxton. There you are, Nina. How are you? You need to unmute. Thank you, Nina. Welcome. You have the floor.
Thank you. I would like to ask for a few extra minutes to present my presentation to council.
You have 5 minutes, Nina.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to move, this is generational housing affordability analysis that I have done in this region. If we can go to page 2, please. This is a short blurb about myself. I only have 5 minutes. I'd like to move on to page 3, please. So in December 2021, the average single detached home in Waterloo region was selling for over $1,021,000. The most recent census states the median household income for 2015 is $77,530. I've performed this, I have this study, it's analysis that takes the 3 components of our housing costs, which is the land, the government imposed costs, and the actual house. I have taken my objective here is this is a response to my clients' concerns on housing attainability. It is intended as a consumer response to governments of all levels with recommendations that I have for increasing housing supply, all types of housing supply, not just the type that I get paid to sell. I've been delegating, reporting, and offering solutions on housing legislation at every level of government. I am an advocate. I'm a volunteer. Nobody pays me to come here. I come here willingly, and I am looking for change. My clients' observations, I have some observations here. My first client here actually has a master's degree, and yet he cannot obtain a home for himself and his children. As a single parent going it alone, I am a sole buyer of a property. It is an arduous task and impossibly challenging to get the green light on financing required to purchase a reasonable home, even with a higher than average income as an individual. I have another comment here from the client. My home made more money in its life than I did. That's a real concern. And I also have my client that has been N12'd from her home. She's been asked to leave her home, that apparently it's been sold and the new owners need it for themselves. People are becoming homeless because of greed. The rental and buy isn't realistic. What are our children going to do for homes in 10 years if this continues? I have a lifelong resident of Cambridge, Mr. Carvello, who commented, the market has discouraged younger generations from obtaining their first homes due to high costs. Affordable housing is unattainable. My kids have all shown interest and have great incomes, but have been told that an entry-level income of $150,000 per year is needed to qualify. Younger generations are being held back. The housing market has crushed the dreams of Canadians looking to own a home, a place to call home, a structured life in which all working Canadians deserve. I have another client here that after it took me 2 years to save the money to get my foot in the door to try and buy a $500,000 house again after losing everything to my battle with cancer. With multiple bidding wars, I was priced out of the market. The backlog of families in the same situation of multiple bidding wars, even renting, was just as bad and qualifying just as hard. These are real people. They've given me their feedback, and that's what has made me do this study. My observations, I've been in this industry even before I became a realtor. I was already involved in housing, and the cost to enter the market has increased over 10 times in 25 years. And the same costs, some of these costs are commission style connected to the market values. They increase and they progress with the market. Land transfer taxes have increased 200 times since 1972. Mortgage default insurance has increased 10.5 times since 1996.
30-second warning, Nina.
Sure. Can we move on to the next page, please? I've said enough here. I'd like to move on to the next page and make some. So here I'd like to show you what $1 million purchase looks like to consumer. So a consumer making $1 million purchase would have to put a minimum down payment of $75,000 down, which would give them a mortgage of $962,000, and their closing costs would be around $127,863.
Okay, and that's a wrap, please.
Mm-hmm. And so what I would like to say, the point I'm trying to make is there's no connection between incomes and the market. So I really look forward to answering your questions because housing is being dealt with locally. We're building it locally, and we look to you for solutions because it rests on you. We need solutions, and I hope you have some questions for me.
Thank you, Nina, for highlighting this very complex issue. I much appreciated your comments. The presentation, I will let you know, will be shared with all of council so that we can do a deeper dive. So thank you very much for presenting today. Okay, so we will move to our consent agenda. I just want to make sure, double check there. Okay. And so thank you again, Nina. We're going to move on to our consent agenda. I'm looking to see if there are any items to be removed from the consent agenda. Oh, okay. So then what I am looking for is a motion to approve the items and information, receiving of information. So Councillor Kiefer, seconded by Councillor Erb. Please use your buttons to vote. All those in favor? Oh, Councillor Foxton, do you have a comment or is that your voting button? Is that your voting button? Perfect, okay. And that's carried. Thank you, everyone. And it was unanimous. Right, okay, so let me get... no, regular agenda items. And the first one is 8.1, strategic focus, sustainable authorization to expropriate lands. I'm looking for Jeff Schelling. Are you there, Jeff? Tom, is that your voting button? That is not your voting button? Okay. Jeff, are you there?
I am. I'm here to answer any questions that council may have regarding the report.
Okay. So are there any questions for this report? Seeing none, we'll now vote on the recommended motion. So I'm looking for someone to move this motion, please. Thank you, Councillor Armstrong, seconded by Councillor Foxton. Please use your buttons. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, and then we are on to the amended scope of work for Fischer-Hallman. And I'm going to call on Thomas to introduce the report. And I think Phil Bauer's got some slides for us. So please, Thomas, you have the floor.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. this project is obviously one that has been going on for a long time, and there has a lot of progress, in particular on dealing with the archaeological finds in there, providing access to the businesses, the roundabout. But Phil Bauer has a brief presentation that shows the work that has been ongoing and really demonstrates the progress that has been made. So I will pass it to Mr. Bauer, and he will share his presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is Clerks going to pull up the presentation, or shall I?
Oh, we're going to do that for you.
All right, there it is.
There we go.
So thank you. Just a brief update on some of the work completed over the last couple of years, as well as the plans for this year and next year for Fischer-Hallman Road, Bleams to Strasburg Creek. Next slide, please. So work started in 2020, and one of the most significant pieces of work that year was the construction of a new twin box culvert at the Strasburg Creek crossing. There's a photo of it there nearing completion of construction. This is a major piece of infrastructure that was required to convey storm flows from the lands to the west of Fischer-Hallman Road. Next slide, please. Also, significant work was conducted in 2020 on archaeological excavations. This photo shows excavations on the east side of Fischer-Hallman Road. And towards the center of the photo, you can also see the construction of the twin box culvert at Strasburg Creek. The construction of that twin box culvert required the full closure of Fischer-Hallman Road for the duration of the 2020 construction season. And it was our hope initially that we would be able to complete all of the archaeological investigations at the same time that the road was closed. As it turned out, we found significantly more archaeological artifacts along the east side of the road than we expected. So we ended up needing pretty much the entire 2020 construction season just to complete the investigations on the east side of the roadway. Next slide, please. In order to get the roadway reopened to traffic, once we got the clearance for the archaeological investigations on the east side, we constructed a temporary 2-lane roadway along the east edge of the corridor, and that's pictured here. And that allowed us to reopen the road to traffic in advance of being able to complete the remaining work to get a 4-lane road constructed. Next slide, please. Subsequently, in 2021, sorry, right there. In 2021, we continued work, and we actually constructed 2 new accesses to service a new grocery store that went in along this section of roadway. That's kind of pictured in the upper left-hand corner there. And we also installed some temporary traffic signals at the south access to this new grocery store. Next slide, please. Also in 2021, we added additional work to the contract to construct a new roundabout at Bleams Road. This was initially intended to be a separate contract after we had finished the other work on Fischer-Hallman Road to the south. But because of the additional archaeological work required, we took the opportunity in 2021 to build this new roundabout. This is just north of the area of archaeological investigations, so there was no hindrance in terms of allowing this work to proceed. So we did complete the new roundabout in 2021. Next slide, please. In 2021, we then moved to the west side of the roadway to continue with the archaeological excavations. This work shows, this photo shows that archaeological work underway. It's very extensive work. It's very labor intensive. It's all hand digging of 1 meter by 1 meter square units to recover and catalog and map all of the artifacts being found. we were not able to complete the archaeological work in the west side in 2021. So that work will now have to continue into 2022. Next slide, please. So our next steps, continuing on Fischer-Hallman Road for 2022, we are hoping that we will be able to complete the archaeological investigations along the west side of the roadway. Once the excavations and cataloging of the artifacts are completed, we need to get clearance from the Ministry of Heritage, Sport, Tourism and Culture before we can continue with further road construction activities. We expect that we will require 4 months of archaeological work plus 6 to 8 weeks for this clearance in 2022, which will put us into the late fall and will not provide enough time to complete the construction of the 4-lane roadway. Therefore, we're now predicting that we will be constructing that 4-lane roadway in 2023. That will include 4 lanes of roadway, multi-use trails along both sides of the roadway, street lighting, a new southbound left turn lane at the south grocery store access, as well as permanent traffic signals at the south grocery store access. The report in front of you today has a recommendation to amend the scope of the existing contract in order to provide additional capacity to complete the archaeological work in 2022, as well as the roadworks in 2023, as laid out here. And I would be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bauer, and I'm looking to Councillor Galloway. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I'm having some technical difficulties. I had a number of questions on the consent agenda. But anyway, on this particular matter, Phil, now that the completion of this segment, let me ask the first question. The roundabouts at Rosenberg and Wallacestown are going ahead in 2022 as planned, I'm assuming?
That is the plan, yes.
And then as far as this section is concerned, now that we're going to have another year delay on completing it, are we able to readjust the Jersey walls to allow for a through lane and a dedicated left into the plaza? I was fine with it. It is now thinking that it was going to be corrected this year, but given that it's going to be another complete year, it seems to me a fairly simple fix, but you know, it'd be up to the engineers to figure whether or not the Jersey walls can just be moved to allow for another lane, so that there would be a dedicated left into the plaza.
That is a possibility depending on how the archaeological work progresses. So we do need to get the ministry clearance on the archaeological work, and we may be able to get a partial clearance to allow for some readjustment of those Jersey barriers. But we will try to work towards that if it is possible, but I can't say for certain at this point in time that will be a possibility.
Yeah, I appreciate you looking into that. I think given that it's going to be another whole year until that all gets completed properly, I think that would be one improvement. The other concern I have, again, I was willing to live with it, given that it was going to be fixed this year, but now again for another year, is that the roundabout, there is the problem coming southbound when you're exiting the roundabout, where people are confused because it narrows so quickly into one lane. It's a 2-lane roundabout, but it goes into one lane almost immediately. Whether or not there needs to be some additional signage to say that the inside lane is for left turn movements only, and the outside lane is for the through lane. A lot of people are confused there, and a lot of near misses, and I believe there have been a number of accidents there. That'll all, of course, be rectified once the 4-lane cross section is put into place. But for now, it's very confusing and problematic.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. We are aware that there's been some concerns and confusion with the way the lane tapers there, and we are taking a look at whether we can make any modifications to the signs there to assist drivers with the temporary condition, for a while longer. I think we don't have, or at this point, we really can't extend that taper on the southbound leg. We're just too constrained for space, but we.
Yeah, I know, I realize that, but it seems that people are setting up going southbound before they get to the roundabout. They're setting up, and they don't seem to be aware that if they're going straight through, they have to be in the right lane, and that won't be the situation in the fullness of time. So there needs to be more delineation, more signage or something to get people properly set up going into the roundabout, because the exit is not normal. It is really not normal. So, okay.
Thank you. Looking to Councillor Foxton.
Thank you. And understand this is not a negative shot or anything else. It's just wanting to get all the ducks in a row. This has been going on so long, and there's so many things that have happened with this project. So we had a financial budget that originally started with this. And with all the things that have escalated, I wonder what our end figure is going to be. And I'm sure finance has that. It's something that maybe council should be aware of, because I think it's going to be a pretty big financial hit down the road due to all the multiple things that have happened with this project. Is that anywhere, Phil, that I missed it or something, or is that something that we should maybe look at and will come?
So through you, Madam Chair, right now we're estimating the final cost of the contract to be just around $20 million, with the caveat that still depends on what we find with the archaeological investigations in 2022. There are additional costs over and above the contract for engineering services and utility works. And so the estimated costs to complete all of those works is laid out in the appendix to the report. That's the remaining costs to be completed. And that adds up to probably just short of $1 million more. Then I don't have the figures for those other costs from 2020 and 21 at hand, but probably right now the estimated final cost is going to be somewhere in the order of between 22 and $23 million once all the costs are added together.
So what was the original cost, Phil, that we put aside budgeted?
I would have to look up that number back in 2020 when we awarded the contract. I just bear with me for a moment here. I could probably pull it out from last year's report. The original estimate would probably have been 10 to 12 million in that order.
Yeah, and I'm not commenting that it's negative or bad, it just is, but we should be aware as a council that, and it's justified. There's no way around this, but I just wanted to make us aware. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Foxton. I see that your screen's on, Mr. Dyer. Is there something you wanted to comment here, or or would you be okay if we moved on?
I think Mr. Bauer answered the questions perfectly well. Thank you.
Yeah, I do appreciate that. And your expediency with which you were able to get onto that old report was quite impressive. Thank you, Mr. Bauer. I look to Councillor Strickland to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to To Phil, I just want to get a little more of a handle on this, and thanks for the report. I certainly recognize the significance of this Indigenous discovery and the archaeological importance of it. But I just want to understand a little bit more of the kind of mechanics of how much it's going to cost and who pays what. So basically the cost, if I read the report correctly, are 4.5 million to date. What is the expected final cost just for the archaeological work itself?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. So yes, the cost to date for the archaeological work is about 4.5 million. We're currently estimating another 1.8 million to complete, so that would add to about 6.3 million for the archaeological work. Again, depending to a large extent on what we find with the remaining work in 2022.
Okay, and this work that's happening is as per provincial legislation, right? Through the Ministry of Heritage, Sport, Tourism, Culture, etc. So there's a prescribed approach whenever artifacts are discovered, and that is governed by that ministry. Is that correct?
That is correct. So there are ministry guidelines for professional archaeologists, which they are bound to follow. And those rules and requirements include consultation and participation by First Nations groups. And so all of this work is being done in accordance with the provincial guidelines for professional archaeologists.
Okay, and so is there any opportunity for the region of Waterloo to have any cost recovery from the province for this cost of archaeological exploration?
To my knowledge, there is no mechanism for cost recovery or provincial funding.
Okay, and then, well, that's disappointing because this is $6.3 million. We're not talking a small amount of money here. And so there's no opportunity from the provincial government to recover any of those funds. Okay, so what happens to the artifacts that are discovered? Where do they go?
So currently the artifacts are being stored by our archaeological firm. They typically spend the winter months cataloging and examining the artifacts. The long-term disposition or storage or handling of those artifacts remains to be determined, and that will be determined in consultation with the First Nations groups that are participating in this investigation. There is some hope and desire that we may be able to use either the artifacts or perhaps the information for some form of display, perhaps at the Waterloo Regional Museum, perhaps at another location. So work is underway and consultations are underway with the First Nations on how these artifacts will be handled and stored moving forward, as well as possibilities for displays. And there is some work included. We're looking to prepare a 3D digital model of this Indigenous village as one possibility, as a way to tell a story about the Indigenous history. We are working with cultural services on that. I see Rodriguez has come onto the call. Perhaps he has something he'd like to add.
Yeah, please do, Rod.
Well, through you, Chair Jowett, I don't have anything additional to add, just to confirm that cultural services and the team at the museum are very much engaged in the project and having extensive conversations with First Nations about what to do with the really remarkable information that we're acquiring through this project. Certainly, lots of discussions are underway regarding future exhibits and ways of jointly interpreting the site, and in the context of Indigenous settlement in the Waterloo region.
Well, thanks for that, Phil and Rod. I certainly hope for two reasons. Like, obviously, the significance of the find. It's of heritage value and respecting our Indigenous brothers and sisters who walked the land before us, and also the $6.3 million. I hate like heck to see these artifacts sit on a shelf after they've all been discovered. So, I'm encouraged to hear that staff are looking at ways in which we can create some learning opportunities out of this. And then going forward, I think, Phil, it might be worthwhile from staff's perspective, maybe from the chair's perspective, to, this is kind of rare, but I think we're likely going to see more of this across our municipality and others. And I think, the expectation, like Indigenous heritage is and, working with Indigenous peoples is, responsibility of all governments, primarily federal government. But there needs to be some way in which we can share some of these costs. That's a lot to ask for local taxpayers. So I think that's something that through some avenue we should approach higher levels of government to look at ways in which we can offset some of these costs that are borne by local taxpayers. I'm not saying it's not worth it. I think it's very valuable work and we need to spend the money. But the approach in which we take this is dictated to us by other levels of government. And I think that there should be some cost sharing of the work that's being done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Strickland. Councillor Erb.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. A simple question. Who actually owns the artifacts? Is it the municipality from where they're retrieved? Is it the federal government? Whose ownership? Because I think, Councillor Strickland is making raising valid concerns about the cost involved. And so I'm curious as to who owns it.
So I see that Helen Chimeri Russell is available to respond to that question as well.
Yeah, thanks, Helen. Please proceed.
Hi. So I think fundamentally they continue to be owned by the Crown. So it would be the province that we keep them. So wherever they're stored will be kept on behalf of the people of the province of Ontario. So that's where the ownership would reside technically.
I think all the more reason then to try and follow up to see if there would be some funding available from upper levels of government. It would be a wonderful addition to our local museum or to other facilities in the region, but it would be nice to have some financial assistance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Erb. Chair Redmond.
Thank you, Chair Jowett. I just wanted to comment on Councillor Strickland's view that maybe we should petition other levels of government. I think that is something that is very much worth following up. And I would just underscore that this is an active conversation at all of the tables provincially that I sit at. And I would also point out that private developers are also subject to these rules and these laws. And I know that when archaeological finds are found on private developers' land, they often come to the region because there has been such an admirable track record of people like Mr. Regier and Mr. Schmidt who have worked for decades, making sure that we had authentic conversations. And I know that there are several of our colleagues on here who went to this site to see the archaeological work. It is fascinating and it's a huge find. So I'd be happy to take that as a takeaway and we can have that discussion in other fora to see if we could petition the provincial government for funds to cover this off.
Thank you, Chair Redmond. And so the motion is before you. I'm looking for someone to move that motion. Thank you, Councillor Verbanovic. Seconded? Thank you, Councillor Shawns. All of those in favor, please use your buttons. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so we are now looking to see information correspondence, council inquiries, and requests for information tracking list is before you. Any other business? Oh, Councillor Galway, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Would you like to proceed?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Somebody keeps canceling my hand. As I said earlier, I may have been having some technical problems when we were doing the consent agenda. I actually have 4 items I want to speak to on the consent agenda. Now, it's not that I still support the consent agenda, but I'm wondering if you would indulge me so that I could ask some questions to staff in regards to.
Okay, so I don't think that there's a mechanism to cancel anyone's hand, and I will tell you that I recognize that you did have some questions previously, so I did pause for a couple of minutes when that motion was made, Councillor Galway. So we can indulge, I think, reasonably, but a vote has been made, so please proceed, and we'll take it on its merit.
Yeah, no, it's mostly questions and a couple of comments. It doesn't change the vote. So the first one was on the investment portfolio. And I just wanted to ask Mr. Dyer, One Investment Funds is mentioned there. When they presented to us, I don't know, a few years ago, I raised the issue about green funds. Do we know any more about whether or not they are providing exclusively green funds for municipalities to invest in? Is that something that has progressed?
Yep. So through you, Madam Chair, to the best of my knowledge, I'm not aware of any specific green fund option that One Funds are currently providing to municipalities. That's not to say they might not be working on it, but to my knowledge at this point, nothing has come forward to that effect.
Well, I would just simply ask staff to keep monitoring that and encouraging them. We really need to consider that, and maybe the next time we do a formal review of our funds, we can make that a requirement. The second question, again for Mr. Dyer, is on the tax ratios. So we have two multi-residential classes. The one that is kind of grandfathered at 1.95, and then all the new multi-residential at 1.0. Do we have any sense, and maybe staff could look into this, total number of units at each of those classes? We've had this special class now at 1.0 for what, 15 years or
20.
longer? 20 years, yeah. There's been a lot of units built in that period of time. And I'm curious whether or not more than half of our units now are taxed at 1.0, or what number percentage-wise are 1.0 and 1.95. I don't expect you to have it off the top of your head unless you do, Mr. Dyer.
Through you, Madam Chair, it's a really good question. I don't have that information off the top of my head, but what I will say is we've actually started a conversation internally at a staff level with respect to the difference, the variation, if you will, between the tax ratio for new multi-res versus the tax ratio for multi-res that would have existed prior to the year 2000, approximately, in the context of the current, I'll call it the housing affordability crisis. So we're taking another look at the taxation of multi-residential properties with an intent of bringing something back to council, either later this year or with the new council next spring, and that will certainly include an overview of the number of properties and the assessment that exists within each of those classes.
I'm very pleased to hear that, and look forward to that report, and maybe correct the inequity one way or another that, as you say, could affect affordability issues. The next item, Madam Chair, was on the transit safety matter. I just simply wanted to go on record again to say that, as I have in the past, that I think we're over enforcing on the ION. And I do, I'm not saying we shouldn't be enforcing, but I think we're doing more than we have to, given the amount of avoidance that we're finding. And I continue to get concerns about the appearance of the enforcement staff, and I do understand that they also serve in a security context. But there are other authorities that do not address their enforcement staff the way that we do. And the last item, Madam Chair, is on the Clean Water Act budget. We got a very extensive, lengthy letter from our BJ Schlegel in regards to this particular matter. And I just want to make sure that staff will be responding to it and would include council in that response. And so I'm just asking for some assurance in that regard.
Thank you. Thomas, would you like to respond to that, please?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, we will respond and we can include council in the response.
Much
Okay,
appreciated. Much
Thank you
appreciated.
very much. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's it.
Okay, we got you.
Yep.
All right, thank you very much, everyone. Moving right along, I think it's hard to believe, but we are looking at our next meeting being April 12th of 2022. And we're going to look for a motion to go into closed session. Give us a few minutes to get everything sort of wrapped up. So, I'm being told we're going to start closed at 11:30. Okay, so we'll get through those. Motion to go into close, please. Councillor Harris, Councillor Kiefer, please use your buttons. All those in favor? Thank you. Okay, so we're taking a bio break as well? Okay.
We're going to start at 11:30.
Yeah, so just to be clear, 11:30 closed. Okay, so we do we need to adjourn this meeting? Yep.